If you've ever scrolled past hotel prices and booked a cute place because it felt homey, these next minutes are for you. 3 travelers sent me their night vision nightmares from short-term rentals. I vetted dates and messages, blurred names, and left in the parts that matter. The rule they all learned too late: anything that seems like it's there to watch a room probably is. Keep your eyes up. Listen close. Last spring my girlfriend and I flew to Austin for a long weekend during the music festival. The hotel rates were insane, so we booked a tiny studio above a detached garage in a quiet neighborhood. The listing photos showed plants, a record player, a big skylight over the bed. The host's name was Cal, mostly 5-star reviews with a few vague comments about quirky design choices, which we read as harmless. We got there at dusk. The space smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something electrical. There was a white smoke detector on the sloped ceiling over the couch, and a second one mounted on the wall 5 feet from the bed, aimed directly at the pillows. I remember thinking 2 detectors made sense in a garage conversion. I even joked that Cal must be a safety nut. That night, after we came back from a show, the second detector flashed a tiny red light that I hadn't seen earlier. Not a smoke alarm flash, the slow blink that tells you a device is on and happy. I stood on the bed to get closer. The plastic felt warmer than the one near the couch. The angle faced the bed like a camera on a tripod. I took a picture with flash. There was a faint circle behind one of the mesh holes, not smoke chamber dark, but glass. My stomach went cold. We unplugged the lamp and leaned it against the wall so it covered the line of sight. A minute later the app pinged with a message from Cal. Please don't tamper with safety equipment. Those are for your protection. The timestamp showed it sent 40 seconds after we moved the lamp. We hadn't touched the thermostat or door sensor. We hadn't posted a story. He couldn't have known unless he was looking. My girlfriend started crying. I messaged back that the detector seemed to be malfunctioning and we were leaving. He replied immediately, no refunds for fraudulent claims. Then, like a customer service script, I live on property and can assist. We heard faint steps outside the stairs and the soft knock of someone trying to sound polite. We left with our bags and drove to a gas station. I called the platform, filed a report, then called the non-emergency police line. An officer met us and followed us back. Cal didn't answer the knock this time, but the officer requested entry with me present. The wall unit came down with 2 screws. Behind the grill was a board with a lens and a slot for a tiny memory card. The officer sealed it in a bag. Cal's account went dark the next day. I still have the photo I took on the bed, the circle behind the mesh looking straight back. If you showed it to me a year before, I would have said it looked like nothing. That's the trick. It looks like nothing until it isn't. I was in Denver for a 2-night training in January, and I went cheap because it was my own card. The listing was a sleek downtown microloft with contactless check-in and a wall of plants in the photos. The host, M, had a policy paragraph about smart devices and said all cameras were exterior only. I screenshotted that line. It felt like insurance, just in case. The place itself felt newly staged in a way that smells like paint and dust. There was a queen bed under a neon sign and, directly across from the pillows, a tall mirror on a stand. I don't usually overthink mirrors, but this one caught light wrong. When I moved, there was a faint lag in the reflection, like a cheap monitor trying to keep up. I blamed travel fatigue. I worked through emails, changed into sweats, and turned off the main lights. In the dimness, a tiny red dot winked from somewhere near the floor. I thought it was a power strip. I turned the lamp back on and traced the glow to a glossy black air freshener plugged into the outlet beside the nightstand. It didn't match the other brand in the bathroom. When I leaned down, I heard the faintest click and a soft high-pitched whine, like electronics waking. I messaged the host to ask if any interior sensors were running. He replied fast, only a noise monitor in the living area, per listing. The dot was in the bedroom. I took the freshener out of the outlet and set it on the counter. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Please do not remove deodorizer units. They prevent complaints. He wasn't supposed to know I'd touched anything that quickly. My stomach folded. I packed my bag, took a photo of the dot and the plug, and headed for the door. As I pulled it shut, a chime sounded from inside the unit, like a doorbell trying to be cute. I kept walking to the elevator and reported the listing from the lobby. Security let the police into the unit with me. The officer twisted the plastic freshener case open and pulled out a board with a lens and a tiny storage card. Another matching unit was in the living area, pointed slightly toward the bed through the doorway. There was no carbon monoxide detector on the ceiling where the listing photos had shown one. The officer tagged the items. The platform refunded my stay. The listing went, temporarily unavailable, which is a neat phrase for something that saw what it shouldn't. I still travel, but I bring my own light. 2 months later I booked a standalone carriage house on the coast of Maine for a weekend with my sister and her little boy. Off-season prices were soft, the photos were sunlit, and the description leaned hard on words like cozy, artisanal, and hand-curated. The host's name was Eli, response time under an hour, rule list longer than average. He emphasized no parties, quiet hours, and that a decibel monitor in the living room kept the neighbors happy. Nothing about interior cameras, which the platform bans. Check-in was key code only. We let ourselves in around 4, dropped snacks on the marble island, and put on a cartoon for my nephew while we sorted beds. In the listing the living room had looked bigger, in person it felt like the furniture had been inched to force symmetry, every chair angled toward a wall-mounted frame that played ambient ocean footage on a loop. My sister called it relaxing. I thought it was odd that the frame stayed on when we turned off the lights. After dinner I took my nephew to brush his teeth. Above the sink, a white smoke detector sat on the wall where a mirror should have been if the bathroom had been laid out by a human. It aimed straight at the sink and faced the shower at a perfect angle. A second detector, identical, was on the ceiling. I stood on the bath mat and stared at the one on the wall until my sister asked if I was okay. I said yes and waved it off. Later, while my nephew fell asleep to the ocean loop in the living room, I opened the guest binder on the counter. The first page was house rules. The second was local tips. The third was a printed screenshot of the listings line about no interior cameras, underlined, as if to prove a point no one had asked. The fourth was a stern paragraph about not covering smoke detectors under any circumstances. That line read louder than the rest. At 2:17 in the morning my sister shook my shoulder. She whispered that the frame in the living room had woken her up. I followed her down the short hall. The room was dark except for the ocean video, which had shifted from a beach view to a close shot of the tide, as if the camera had been moved closer to the water. The speakers played a thin hiss, like wind and white noise together, and underneath that I heard the tiny click of a lens adjusting. On the TV input menu, a gray box floated over the loop that read HDMI 2, living room cam. Neither of us had pressed anything. I picked up the remote and tried to back out of it. The box disappeared. The ocean came back. I set the remote down, and the box popped up again. We didn't talk. We just started unplugging. We pulled the frame's power, the router on the shelf, the sound bar, the tall mirror's cord in the bedroom. When I reached to unplug the smoke detector by the sink, a message arrived on my phone from Eli: please do not disable essential devices. If you need help, reply here. I hadn't messaged him. My sister hadn't either. The time stamp was immediate, like he had felt the power drop. I told my sister to pack. We put my nephew in his coat asleep and carried him out to the car. From the driveway we could see the carriage house windows holding black like glass eyes. In the upstairs pane, a tiny red glow pulsed and then faded, pulsed and then faded. We drove to the police station and waited in the lot until an officer was available. He came back with us. Eli didn't answer the knock. The officer requested entry with me present as the registered guest. Inside, the frame was back to its loop, power cord hot to the touch. The bathroom wall detector had a piezo buzzer inside and a second board mounted with a lens cut through the plastic grill at an angle. A micro SD card sat in a slot behind a piece of tape. Another identical unit was under the eave in the bedroom, facing the bed. The officer bagged the cards and the devices. The router closet was locked. Eli arrived while we were there and insisted the detectors were noise monitors. The officer read him the platform policy in his own listing about interior cameras being prohibited. He went quiet. In the morning the platform messaged me a refund, and the listing flipped to under review. The officer emailed a case number. My sister sent me a screenshot she couldn't stop rereading, a 5-star review from a month before ours that said, "Loved the ocean video, felt so calm to sleep in front of." I still wonder if they knew what was pointed at their comm. These stories don't mean every host is a voyeur. Most are decent people renting out space to make a mortgage. But night after night of reading reports taught me a simple contrast worth remembering: hotels sell predictability, homes on the internet sell personality. Predictability is boring until you want boring. Personality is charming until it watches you breathe. Before I hit reserve now, I look for one thing in the photos: redundancy. 2 detectors in one room. 2 mirrors facing each other. 2 little black boxes that don't match. If I arrive and something points where people undress or sleep, I assume it's not an accident. I cover it, I document it, and if anything pings my phone the moment I move a plug, I leave. The good hosts will thank you for flagging a problem. The bad ones will call you a liar. The camera won't care either way, it will see what it sees unless you make it stop. Watch before you book, and keep your eyes open.